Hey everybody, it's Austin. Welcome to this episode of Literary Gladiators. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video and hear about some of my humble opinions about some of the books I'm going to talk to you about today. Earth Day just passed. I was kind of hoping to have everything finished before Earth Day, but the spring semester of school is atrocious, so I don't have as much time as I thought. But Earth Day just passed, and thinking about that, I want to talk about some of my favorite books and some books that have been really important to me that kind of talk about the environment and like themes of the environment and nature and things like that. I don't really have any like how-to books on this list, but I did just briefly want to talk about this little book here. It's called The Green Book. It is by Elizabeth Rogers and Thomas M. Kostigen. Kostigen? I don't really know. Sorry, Thomas, wherever you are. I apologize. But this is a really great book. I got it a few years ago, and it's a really cute how-to book printed entirely on recycled paper, and it has a lot of information about ways that you can be more environmentally friendly in all aspects of your life. So, for example, there's a chapter on sports, and I'll talk about, hey, do you like sports? Do you play sports? Do you watch sports? Here are some ways to be more environmentally friendly when you're doing that. Health and beauty, sections on music and entertainment, work, things around the house. So it's really cool. So check it out. It's called The Green Book. Once again, it is by Elizabeth Rogers and Thomas M. Costigan. So check that out. So the first book that I want to talk about is Silent Spring. It's a book by Rachel Carson. It's from the 60s, and it's a classic. And when I say it's a classic, I mean like it's a, excuse me, it's a classic about environmental issues. It was really one of the first books to be published and to be a bestseller. I want to say it was a bestseller. I know it was sold pretty popularly. But it was one of the first popularly sold books to talk about environmental issues, and it's really cool. I highly recommend you check it out. So it was written in the 60s, and it talks about human use of pesticides, which in turn kind of kills off a whole bunch of animals, and then that has a negative effect on society and our world and stuff like that. And that's why it's called Silent Spring, because the spring becomes silent because there are so few creatures that now live. I think it's really interesting because it came out in the early 60s, and it talks about you know, human use of chemicals and how that is going to affect our environment. And I think that that's a really important topic to think about right now because it's 2017, and there are still people who don't believe that humans are playing a role in, you know, environmental issues that exist today. There are people who don't think that climate change is real. There are people who think that it is real, but that humans aren't playing a role in it. And I think it's like 93% of scientists agree that climate change is real and that human activity is contributing to it. So I think that it's really interesting that in the 60s, Rachel Carson wrote this book about human involvement in our world and how that was affecting the environment we live in, and how it's 2017, and even though pesticide use and climate change might be related, I don't know of any evidence that says that they are, but pesticide use certainly has an effect on our environment, and I think it's just interesting that, you know, it's 2017, which is, you know, 55 years later or ish, and we're still talking about whether or not humans are having this negative impact on our environment. So it's a really cool book. Definitely recommend y'all to check it out. And it is a classic about environmental issues. So anytime that you kind of like join a discussion group or are looking to read more about environmental issues in literature and stuff, this is definitely a book that will always be included. The next book I want to talk about is a classic book. In a different vein than Silent Spring, but it's The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. I'm really corny and I love Dr. Seuss. I always have. I think that his books are really great, and even though they're children's books, they talk about really important issues and really important social issues, political issues, etc., etc. So I really like a lot of them, and I love his art style. It's weird, it's kooky. I love it. And the Lorax is a really great book. It's one of my favorite books of his. Not my favorite book by Dr. Seuss, but it's a really great book because I think it talks about, the importance of loving the world that we're in and understanding that we have been blessed to live on this planet and that we can't continue to just take advantage of it, because eventually we're going to lose the things that we care about. And that's what happens in the Lorax. We realize that we can use the truffula trees for our own good, but what happens when we do that is we can sometimes get caught up in creating things that aren't really necessary for us to have in order to live, but that we can sell and we can make money, and eventually, there's no truffula trees left. And then it ends with, the Lorax and unless, and how nothing's going to change unless someone cares a whole awful lot, and there's one single seed, and blah blah blah. It's really cool. If you're interested, if you like the Lorax, well, if you haven't read it, read it. It's a children's book, but it's great. And if you have read it and you like it, you should check out a book by, or just check out Naomi Klein in general, because the Lorax is about environmental issues and how commercialism and making a quick buck plays into that. And Naomi Klein writes about books about disaster capitalism, which is an idea that kind of relates to that, about how, because we as humans and in a capitalist society, which is what the West is, we always want to sell more things and make more money, which, yes, we can look at and say there's benefits to it because we can increase economies and stuff like that and increase standards of living among certain peoples. But the downside is, one, who's benefiting from it, and two, what are we doing to the planet, and what's that gonna mean for us? It's great to make all this money, but if we're gonna kill the planet we live on, who needs money? You can't eat money. When there's no trees left, there's no fish left in the ocean. Only then will we realize you can't eat money. So, anyways, next book I want to talk about is the book on this list that's not really fiction. I mean, I think he fictionalized some things, but it's basically his true life experience. But it's Walden by Henry David Thoreau. This is a book that I really enjoyed because I don't have a lot of time anymore to do a lot of like environmental, outdoorsy type things, but I do really enjoy that. I love going to parks. Hiking is fun. I used to like to go on like bike trails in the woods and stuff, and I really like that. So reading Walden was really cool because what Thoreau did was he lived in some form of isolation for a year, and he writes about his experience, and it's really cool to like see not see, but to read about the things that he did and what his life was like. It's really cool. I think there's a controversy about the book because Thoreau makes it sound like he had no human contact for a year, and that's totally not true. He absolutely did, but I still think it's a really cool book to talk about how we can get more in touch with our environment and more in touch with nature, and how we can benefit from that. So that's really cool. So definitely check it out. It is a classic as well, and it's a really good book. I mean, it can be kind of dry at times, but I thought it was really fun and cool to read and see what his experience was. And the last book I want to talk about is actually not at all a classic, so there we go. I'm trying to put some modern things in. And it also doesn't necessarily have to do directly with the environment, but it has a lot of natural themes in it. It's called The Great Perhaps. It's by Meno, who is one of my favorite contemporary authors. He's really cool. I highly suggest everybody check him out. The Great Perhaps, though, I actually bought because it was the second book of his I read. The first book of his I read is called Hairstyles of the Damned, and that's really cool. It's about it's like a coming-of-age novel, but it's about this guy who kind of finds himself through like the punk rock scene, and it was cool because I had a similar experience in high school, so that's why I liked it. But Great Perhaps I actually picked up because it was $1 at some local dollar store, because they misprinted some of the pages or something, I don't know. But I picked it up, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's not necessarily about the environment. It's about a family of, I think it takes 5 people. Yeah, because there's the mother, the father, a grandfather, and then the 2 daughters of the family. And each chapter changes whose perspective it is. So it's the family story, but it's kind of almost like it's 5 separate stories, because yes, the stories interlock, but each one has different themes, and they're struggling. Each person's struggling with different things. So it's very interesting to read and check out. But there's a lot of natural themes in it. So for example, one of the characters, the father, has this condition where he actually passes out when he sees clouds. It's very interesting. But so there's a lot of imagery with, clouds, and that is throughout the book. He's also searching for this giant squid, and so that's kind of talking about finding, the wonders of the natural world that we live in that we haven't discovered yet, that, we might know are out there, but we also don't necessarily haven't had contact with. So that's really cool. There's also a whole theme. The mother of the video what the heck? That's a book. It's not a video. This is a video. Okay, sorry. The mother in the book is doing a lot of research on animals as well, and so there's just a lot of stuff about nature, and about also about human nature, and how human nature plays into nature, and in some ways the preservation of, as well as the destruction of, nature and our environment. So it's cool, even though it's not directly about the environment. It's really about the family, and it's about family struggles. It's a really great book to check out because it has some cool natural themes and does touch upon the environment. So those are the books that I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope if you haven't read some of these books that you definitely go out and check them out, or you check out books related to them. 110% recommend you read stuff by Meno, because he's really great and writes about a lot of different things, and I really appreciate it. And definitely check out the Green Book, or just go online and look up ways that you can make little changes in your life to help preserve our environment, because it's important. We should love the planet we live on. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.